Welcome back. In the mitigation department, now, as an environmental engineer, I worked for about 7 years in that business. I mentioned 2 of which was in the radiation engineering business before I became a home inspector. So in pretty much everything else, we talk about remediation. In radon, we talk about mitigation, and the reason for that is that you can't get all the radon in any space. You can only bring it down to what's called background, which, as I mentioned, is 1 to 2 picocuries per liter. As far as mitigation is concerned, you really only have 2 options, and most of the mitigators would only have you be aware of 1 option, and that's called subslab mitigation. The concept with subslab mitigation is that you've got that radon gas that is outside your home in the soil, and it's trying to get into your house. And so the concept with subslab mitigation is they're going to put a fan down there, they're going to suck the soil gases out of the soil, and they're going to blow those soil gases to the exterior of the house so that those do not get into your breathing air inside the house. Now, it's out in the air outside, but that's a big enough pool of air that it just kind of goes away and becomes part of the atmosphere. So that's the concept with subslab mitigation. Generally, for a lot of homes, you're talking in the $1,200 to $1,500 range. Sometimes if the home is bigger, they'll put in a couple and the prices might go a little bigger. Sometimes if the remediator is slimy, who knows how much he's going to want to soak a person for that, the mitigation. So that is what subslab mitigation is. To be a little bit more precise, they're actually going to punch a hole through your slab in your basement, and they're going to vent that air, as I mentioned, to the exterior of the home. And that actually does a pretty good job of dropping radon levels down below 4 picocuries per liter. Another option that you have, so that's, I often talk about the $10 fix and the $10,000 fix. In this case, where we're talking about radon and mitigation, the more expensive fix is $1,500-ish. The less expensive fix can be as low as $2 to $4. And in many cases what that is, and this actually happened in one home that I did for one of my friends who's a realtor. She was a listing agent and at the time, and she had a home come up 4.2, which of course is just barely over the threshold for what contamination is. And so she called me up and she says, of course, if we have a real problem, then we want to fix this. But if we don't, I want to know about it. So I went over there and I saw a number of cracks. And before they spent the $1,000, give or take, on mitigation, I said, well, let me do some things. And I went to Home Depot, got some concrete caulk, and I just sealed up some of the cracks that were around the perimeter of the property. This was an unfinished basement, and it had some slab cracks, and it had a couple of gaps between the slab and the foundation. And it only took me 2 tubes of caulk to take care of this, but and that cost me about $4 or $5. So I did that and came back a couple days later, did the test, and it came back 2.7. All of a sudden, I was a hero, and I picked up an inspection fee, but more important, I picked up a realtor for life. She only stopped using me after she moved to Hawaii. And that's, for me, that's a good way of doing business, is just being the hero so that people remember you and call you. The reason I'm telling you this story is not to make myself a hero, but it is to illustrate that in many cases there is an inexpensive fix or a preventive fix for a lot of things that you can do if you know what to do and when and how. So in this case, yeah, it's a couple of tubes of concrete caulk. They're cheap. Another thing you can do is maybe the home I was in before the one I'm living in now, we had a basement, and right next to it we had a crawl space. And so what I did to avoid big radon problems is, first off, I didn't put a lot of kids down there. We rarely went down into the basement. But more importantly is I put a seal on the door between the crawl space and the living space. And I even went so far as to go with just an inexpensive foam door pad so that we had a better seal between point A and B. Again, radon has a 3-day half-life, so if it has trouble getting from point A to B in a quick time, it's just not going to make it there, and you're going to have lower radon levels. So, 2 ways of doing it: subslab mitigation and then just sealing. We'll be right back.